Hi everybody, I was asked to do a birth trauma awareness video for Birth Trauma Awareness Week from the 14th till the 18th, I think it was, of August for the Birth Trauma Association UK, and to talk about my own personal experience. I was asked to keep the video quite brief and short and sweet, which I will have to do because my daughter is down sleeping and I'm not sure how long she's going to be sleeping for. So I'll start basically with a brief history. I have had endometriosis since I was 16 and it's been absolutely excruciating. I have managed it myself using herbs and stuff. I did have one surgery to burn some of it off, but it wasn't very successful. I then discovered, well, I knew I couldn't have children. I then discovered when I was booked in for hysterectomy that I was pregnant with a little miracle baby, and it was absolutely fantastic. I had initially wanted a cesarean section because I had a heart condition when I was born, although everything is fixed and everything's absolutely fine. But my consultant wanted me to have a natural birth. Generally speaking, because I am quite an holistic person, I would have went for a natural birth if, I would have planned for a natural birth if my heart hadn't been a problem. So they sent me for tests and my heart was as right as rain, no problem at all. And so then I had to pick up the confidence and get my mindset on having a natural birth instead. So that was fine. I'm quite an active person and I did Pilates before I was pregnant, and so I continued with my Pilates during pregnancy. I didn't have too many problems during the pregnancy, apart from migraines and stuff, but that was related to my endo. Um, Sorry, sometimes I lose my train of thought. Um, so that was okay. I geared myself up for the natural birth. I opted to have just gas and air, no other pain relief, because having already experienced the pain of endometriosis since I was 16, I thought labour would be a dwaddle. So that was fine. I went into labour then. I was in labour for 16 hours. The contractions at the start to me were the most painful. When I started getting contractions for pushing, they weren't painful at all, and I did manage to birth my baby on nothing more than gas and air, which everybody, family and friends thought, and even the professionals thought I would never be able to do. They kept saying to me, when you go into labour, you'll be wanting an epidural and you'll be wanting this and you'll be wanting that. And I was, 100% going to prove them wrong, and I did. And I should have been proud of the fact that I was able to birth my child naturally. I was very calm and relaxed through the labour. I did it on nothing but gas and air. I got to 9 centimeters dilated and I couldn't get past the last 1 centimeter. They did an internal and stuff and tried to get me to, move the baby's head down past that, and I couldn't get past it. So I lay there for another couple of hours, eventually got past that blip. I was pushing and pushing and pushing, and still the baby wasn't coming down the birth canal. Now, she was checked continually throughout my labour and she was doing absolutely fine. She was hiccuping away, happy as Larry. As I say, I stayed calm and relaxed. I could hear other people screaming and giving birth in the room next door, but that didn't bother me. I just stayed calm and relaxed and kept focused and concentrated on breathing with the gas and air. Then they discovered that my baby's head was actually coming down the birth canal sideways, and they left me for far too long pushing. The head wasn't going to come out sideways. They left me for far too long pushing before they got a consultant in to finally turn my baby's head round. As a result of that, my baby was born with a squashed nose and facial features, which thankfully have come all right again, and she's now being discharged from the hospital, and she's a very fit and healthy baby. The next thing to happen then was my contractions started slowing. They kept getting me to go to the toilet because seemingly when I was on the toilet sitting upright, my contractions started to come, but as soon as I got back onto the bed again, they disappeared. I did every position imaginable. I done my own positions, which was staying upright, and so the gravity would pull the baby down, but nothing seemed to work. In the end, I ended up lying on the bed, and they had my legs in an L shape. The right leg was the one that was sticking out to try and make more room for the baby's head to come down through. I think half the time I was pushing when there was no contractions. There was my initial midwife, and then there was a sister who was supervising her. because I didn't initially know that my initial midwife was not qualified to do certain things. I wasn't told that. Um, so at the finish up then, I eventually did manage to push the baby out. She came on out, she was laid on my chest for skin to skin contact, but not for very long, as the midwife had to cut me prior to the baby coming out. And as I say, the initial midwife wasn't qualified to do an episiotomy. So rather than the sister, because I was a first time mother and so forth, and because of my problems and things, rather than her do the episiotomy, she let the unqualified midwife do it, and so she didn't know where to cut me. She cut me with scissors and she completely butchered me down there. Obviously, at the time, I didn't know that. The baby come on out then. I got a few brief moments of skin to skin contact before the baby was handed to daddy. Well, she was taking me first, obviously, then handed to daddy to be bottle fed. I was losing an awful lot of blood. My partner said when he had the baby in his arms and he was walking away to sit on the seat and he happened to look over at me, he said it was like something out of a horror film. The next stage was I was to get an injection to push out the placenta, which again I wasn't given. Um, the midwife, the one that wasn't qualified, decided to push on my stomach and push the placenta out. So that was fine, but she broke my umbilical cord in the process. She pulled it off and she started laughing. She thought it was absolutely hilarious. She started laughing. When she pulled the umbilical cord off, there was blood spattered everywhere. I was covered in blood. The whole room was covered in blood. The walls, the floor. The blood just narrowly missed my partner bottle feeding our baby, and she just thought this whole thing was hilarious. My other birthing partner, Sheena, however, was fuming, and at one stage she had to walk out of the room, otherwise she was going to swing for the midwife. Um, I didn't get much skin to skin contact with my baby because I had to be stitched up as quickly as possible, and they were worried that I might need a blood transfusion. A consultant was also rushed in to try and do an ultrasound scan to make sure no pieces of the placenta had been left behind. But I was later told by another doctor, I mean, the consultant at the time said there wasn't anything left there, but I was later told when I took my bad infection and ended up back in the hospital again that I had lost that much blood. There was that much blood there that he couldn't have seen on the ultrasound scan what was there and what wasn't. So that was fine. I was to be stitched up then, and again, the sister that was supervising wouldn't stitch me up. The unqualified midwife who didn't know how to cut me and didn't know how to stitch me up any better, she stitched me up. It took over an hour. For me, that was the most painful part of my labour, was being stitched up. That is the most excruciating pain, far worse than endometriosis pain or any other pain I've ever endured in my entire life. I screeched and screeched. I puffed and puffed in the gas and air. I was totally out of it by the time I was finished with the gas and air. They were supposed to have numb me down there, and they didn't give me very much of the numbing stuff at all. They had told me to look at the baby, and I couldn't even look at the baby. I was screaming and crying. It was that excruciating. Um, so that was fine. I was wheeled down after that then to the ward and so forth, and I came home then 2 days later. My community midwife came out to me, and I was feeling very hot and feverish. I really didn't feel myself. I was so tired, I couldn't cope with the baby, nothing. And she said to me, I'm very sorry, but I'm going to have to refer you back to the hospital again. I think you've got a really bad infection down there. I'm not surprised because the unqualified midwife had butchered me. I was rushed back to the hospital. I was hospitalised for about a week, and my baby was not allowed to be in with me, so her father had to look after her for that week, which was hard on all three of us. Because of that, I have found it very hard to bond with my baby, and it's only now that she's just turned 3 months that I'm beginning to bond with her. Um, it was really touch and go when I was in the hospital. At one stage, they didn't know exactly what the infection was. They thought it was a blood infection. They were testing me for everything. My temperature had reached a very dangerous level, and they didn't know if I was even going to make it through the night. I eventually did get home, but again, my wound and stuff from inside wouldn't heal up properly, and so I have been going to the hospital continually since birth for treatment every week to try and heal down there up. And I'm now pleased to say that it is finally healing, but I'm not out of the woods yet. Things are touch and go, and my endo unfortunately has come back, because I'm now in pain with it. Unfortunately, there's nothing they can do for me at this stage because it's too soon after the birth to do any surgery. So I actually manage my endometriosis myself herbally. So I'm just hoping that continues to work for me until I go back to the hospital in 6 months, unless I need to go before that. But the traumatic birth, I really wanted a positive experience that I could share with everybody, and it's been really, really hard for me bonding with the baby. It has put a strain on my relationship with my partner. Um, Not to mention how I feel about my overall body, just physically, mentally, and emotionally. It's still very raw and still very overwhelming. I'm surprised that I've managed to do this video without crying, because the first time I done this video I did cry, and I wasn't able to keep the video short and sweet then. I don't wish this on anybody. As hard as it is to talk about it, I do think it is a good idea to talk about it and to make people aware of this. I know very often when someone is pregnant, everybody is quick to tell them of the horror stories. And at the time when I was pregnant and I was looking at all these horror stories and all, and I was getting all worked up and stressed out about it, and everybody kept saying to me, think positive, it may not happen to you. And so I had to keep that mindset. But sometimes it maybe is beneficial, just to be aware that sometimes it can go wrong. Um, you know, um, but it definitely has had, a traumatic